Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we're going to be talking about a company that just recently got uplisted to the NASDAQ exchange. The company name is MindMed Inc. or Mind Medicine Inc. And it's really exciting because they've had a number of recent announcements that I wanted to walk you guys through in this video. Now, in addition to the uplist this week, MindMed has also been the subject of a lot of forum board discussion, and there's a ton of attention on this company. So I wanted to walk you guys through their business model and my thoughts on this company moving forward. Now, before we get into the video, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out. It helps the channel grow, and it helps get this content to other people like yourself who might find value. Let me know in the comment section below if you're holding MindMed or if you're looking to get into this company in the near future. Now, without further ado, let's roll the intro clip and talk about MindMed. Okay guys, so that's right. Today we're going to be talking about Mind Medicine Inc., also known as MindMed. Now, the timing of this video is important because this company, I've been wanting to do a video on them for some time. They're very similar to like a Red Light Holland or a Field Trip Health in the sense that they're involved in the psychedelic medicine industry. However, I didn't get around to it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because they've had some big news this week as they were actually uplisted to the NASDAQ. So this stock has received a lot of buzz this week. Obviously, an uplisting like that is a huge step for this entire industry, but specifically Mind Medicine itself. And a lot of the forum boards, Reddit, Wall Street Bets, they've got their hands on this company, and it's really getting a lot of attention. So I thought it was perfect timing to talk about this. It's obviously an industry that's similar to the MJ space. They've seen a lot of strides in terms of decriminalization and legalization for some of these experimental treatments, and I think it's a really interesting stock to talk about. So you can see here, this is as of close on April 27th, so after the market was closed. They had a really difficult day. We're going to jump over to the NASDAQ listing in a second, but this is their Canadian listing, so you can see they were down about 16%, 92 cents Canadian, which actually brought them under that $5 mark. So in my mind, they are now considered a penny stock once again. Now, in terms of market cap on this company, they're trading around $1 billion right now. This number is fluctuating, obviously, as they're seeing these big price swings in their share price, but it is a fair-sized company, and it is much bigger than Red Light Holland or Field Trip Health. So just keep that in mind as we move through the presentation. Mind Medicine is a lot more focused on the actual research and development and drug pipeline, whereas Field Trip Health was involved with the clinical aspect and actually running brick and mortar clinics for patients to come in. And then obviously Red Light Holland is more involved with the microdosing and the psilocybin truffles, almost in the CPG or consumer packaged goods space. So a little bit different, but very similar industry. If you scroll down on this page, it gives a good little summary of the company's operations. So they're headquartered in New York, New York. Mind Medicine is a psychedelic medicine biotech company, discovers, develops, and deploys psychedelic-inspired medicines and their therapies to address addiction and mental illness. The company is assembling a compelling drug development pipeline of innovative treatments based on psychedelic substances, including psilocybin, so that's what Red Light Holland uses, LSD, MDMA, DMT, and an ibogaine derivative they call 18-MC. So as mentioned, definitely more involved with the development and creation of these new drugs or treatments than some of the others in this space. Now, if we jump over to the NASDAQ listing, you can see here they trade under the ticker symbol MNMD, so a little bit different than the Canadian side where they traded under MMED, and you can actually see that huge 30% downswing on their first day of trading. So they opened up above $5 US, about $5.20, and you can see throughout the trading session they downtrended and actually closed right around that $4 mark. Now this article actually talks about their first day of trading, saying psychedelic drug maker MindMed stumbles in NASDAQ debut. However, the CEO expressed he's not really worried about it. Obviously, there's going to be intraday highs and lows, and this company is focused on long-term shareholder returns and bringing these drugs from pipeline to practical use for their patients. Now, there's a couple interesting things in this article, so if you scroll through it here, you can see MindMed is actually only the second major psychedelic drug developer to be listed on a major US exchange. So the first was actually Compass Pathways, which I probably will do a video about in the coming weeks here, but it is quite an honor for MindMed to join an exchange like this and really get that notoriety that goes with some of these major US stock exchanges. So you can see they talk about the shares falling 30%. It's obviously been a very volatile week for this stock. They were up 65% Friday, up another 33% Monday in anticipation for this big uplist, and then shares collapsed or fell back like we saw about 30% in that first day of actual trading. And I think a lot of this was really to do with the Reddit community, the Wall Street bets getting a hold of this and really running it up, similar to what we saw with GME. I actually saw some of the companies that I've talked about on this channel, Red Light Holland and Field Trip Health, had a very strong last couple trading sessions as well. And I think that was really related to the visibility and exposure that this sector received because of MindMed. Now, the CEO of this company is named J.R. Ron. We're going to look at him in a little bit more detail in a second here, but he made a few interesting comments. So he said, I think it's a sign the entire psychedelics industry is growing up. We're accessing a whole new fresh set of investors that hasn't been able to access us before, which he believes is going to include sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and other retail investors. So by getting this uplist, why this is so important is because it really gives accredited and institutional investors access to companies like this. And if you're the first mover in this space, a lot of people want to jump in and take advantage of that, which is obviously great for share price and existing shareholders. Now, another reason MindMed is so well followed is because it's got a number of very high profile investors. So most of you have probably seen the show Shark Tank. Kevin O'Leary and Bruce Linton, who is actually the former CEO of Canopy Growth, so one of the major players in the MJ space, are both involved with this company, and they really see the benefits of some of these new treatments and psychedelic alternatives. A little bit further down here, you can see the industry has made great strides in 2020, removing barriers to legalization, which I mentioned in the intro. In November, Oregon actually became the first state to fully legalize medical use of psilocybin, and there's been several other cities since then, most notably Denver and Washington, D.C., that have actually decriminalized the use of this. And that's really the first step to allow these companies to start researching and building out these platforms. So in terms of what MindMed actually does, they're really focused on breaking through traditional mental health treatments and coming up with new remedies to help these patients. So again, very similar tune to what we saw with Field Trip Health and Red Light Holland, which are much smaller cap companies, and I would really recommend you guys take a look at if you're interested in this space. MindMed calls out, we're here to help patients unlock the healing power of the mind through psychedelic-inspired medicines and experiential therapies. So MindMed firmly believes that the existing treatments aren't working and people are looking for alternatives. So they believe solving mental illness and addiction requires a novel or new approach to this category. These are three of the areas of focus that they talk about a lot in this presentation. So anxiety, they're focused on experiential therapies, which transcend traditional mental health or mental health care treatment. ADHD and addiction, so psychedelic-inspired medicines, which include things like MDMA, LSD, and psilocybin. And then psychedelic innovation. So you'll see research and development as a common theme in this video or presentation, and MindMed is really focused on developing those new compounds, therapies, methods, technologies, techniques to optimize patient outcomes moving forward. Now, I wanted to share this slide before we get into the actual investor deck because this company is fundamentally different than a lot that we've looked at because they're not currently generating any significant revenue. They're actually really focused on a lot of different clinical trials, which are at different phases of completion. So I wanted to show you guys this chart. They show LSD experimental therapy, their 18-MC opioid withdrawal treatment, and LSD microdosing as examples here. But what's interesting on this slide is actually the various different phases of clinical trial. So there's actually pre-discovery, discovery, preclinical, phase 1A, phase 2A, phase 2B, and phase 3. Now, I don't spend a lot of time in the medical or biotech realm in terms of my investment style, so it was interesting for me to understand how many different steps are involved in bringing one of these drugs from the lab to production or to the market. And I think that's important to pause on here because a lot of these experimental treatments and drugs that are in their pipeline are not yet in production. And that is one thing to be aware of as a potential investor in this company. So there's a number of different stages they need to clear. There's a number of different products that they have in this pipeline, and they're not generating substantial revenue at this point in time. Now we're going to look at their cash flow statement and their actual financial report at the end of the video so you can see that cash burn rate. But it is fundamentally different than a lot of companies we talk about on this channel. So I wanted to make sure that we're very crystal clear about that going into the investor deck here. So as promised, I wanted to take a second and pause on their CEO and co-founder named J.R. Ron. So this is the guy we saw those comments from in that initial news article. J.R. is a former Silicon Valley tech executive. So he's got a lot of experience with well-known companies, and he's got that entrepreneurial or innovative mindset that's so common in big tech or Silicon Valley. And he really had an epiphany that transformational solutions to mental illness and addiction may lie in psychedelic medicines. So he actually stepped away, took 2 years to research this stuff and learn more about it. And then he began personally investing in various psychedelic research opportunities through his own investment company. JR then partnered with a drug development veteran, Stephen Hurst, to start MindMed in 2019. So this company has only been around a couple of years, and to see that they've already made this much progress and are now listed on the NASDAQ exchange is truly impressive, and it speaks to JR's knowledge and experience as an executive. So from there, they assembled a team to really start researching and developing solutions in this field and started exploring some of the opportunities that psychedelic treatments could offer. Now, one other thing that's interesting and noted in this little write-up is JR was actually involved with Uber, specifically with market expansion and operations. So that's a company that's seen tremendous growth. It's a very innovative company that really turned the rideshare taxi industry on its head. And he's looking to do that same thing here in the medical field. And I felt this slide was very fitting to follow because this is exactly why he wants to target the medical field. There's such a big addressable market, and medicine overall makes up one of the biggest industries in the entire world. So they identify the total addressable market here in terms of the various categories or subcategories that they're focused on. So in terms of global anxiety drug sales, that's at nearly $5 billion annually. ADHD drug sales are close to $10 billion annually. Anti-addiction drug sales are near $6 billion. And global annual depression drug sales are at nearly $10 billion. So between these 4 different categories, there's over $30 billion a year in terms of total addressable market. So absolutely massive category to be involved in. And that's exactly why JR feels like this is an industry that he really wants to shift and focus on moving forward. And this slide really speaks to that. So this is something we saw with Field Trip Health as well. But the current treatments for a lot of these issues, like anxiety, addiction, ADHD, really aren't working. And a lot of people really don't find success or potentially relapse after treatment. So you can see there's been a 67% increase in anxiety prescriptions between 1996 and 2013, but only about a third or 36% of patients, people that suffer from anxiety, actually seek treatment. So again, huge opportunity or potential here. In terms of addiction, there's been nearly 400% increase in overdose deaths from 1999 to 2018, and 88%, so nearly 9 out of every 10 patients actually relapse once they've been treated with these existing medications or therapy. Now, in terms of ADHD, there's been a 123% increase in prevalence or occurrence in this area, and 90% of people are not receiving treatment or adequate treatment. Now, MindMed believes LSD might be a safer and better alternative to treat some of these disorders, and they actually call out that this could be a safer alternative overall than some of these pre-existing solutions. So down here in the bottom right, they show the number of ER visits that are attributed to illicit drugs. Now keep in mind this is from 2011, so it's quite outdated. But according to this research, under 5,000 people were actually admitted to the ER because of LSD related concerns, which represents 0.34 or about a third of 1% of all ER visits that year. So I think a lot of people really have a stigma about some of these drugs, that they're party drugs or hippies use LSD or whatever the case is. But in actuality, they're very safe. Very few people have issues or health concerns from using these drugs, and they could actually be used to treat a lot of these illnesses or ailments more effectively and safer than some of the existing treatments we have now. So this really creates this paradigm shift, or a treatment paradigm, that MindMed is really focused on. So they've kind of divided the solution into two alternatives, either non-hallucinogenic or hallucinogenic. Under the non-hallucinogenic solutions, they have LSD microdosing for ADHD and this 18-MC drug for addiction treatment. Now, these are derived from psychedelics. They have very small or negligible hallucination effect, and they would actually be doctor prescribed, where the customer or patient could actually pick up this prescription from their pharmacy, take it home, and use it in the comfort of their own home without doctor or nurse supervision. Now, on the hallucinogenic side, obviously this is a little bit more risky, and the treatment itself is a little bit more intense. So this is actually going to be facilitated or overseen by a therapist and or doctor. It's going to be in clinic treatment, so similar to Field Trip Health, and they would actually leverage a high dose or experiential dose, they call it, of psychedelics. So this would be used to treat anxiety or cluster headaches, and both would harness LSD as the core ingredient. So continuing on this new treatment or paradigm shift, MindMed really uses this 3D approach. So discover, develop, deploy. They're focused on acquiring new chemical entities and other psychedelics through strategic partnerships and collaborations. So they've actually purchased a number of clinical trials in different phases to speed up the process. They then develop, and they currently have 17 trials either completed or ongoing in process. They then develop these chemical entities, so they take the compounds through FDA regulated clinical trials while partnering with different pharmaceutical companies. They have 3 different commercial trials in place right now. And then finally is actually deploying this stuff. So building out strategic alliances with various hospitals, research centers, and ultimately insurers, so people can get this covered through their work, that will license these protocols and approve drugs to use for their patients. And this is where they've actually partnered with the New York University training program and this digital medicine platform that we'll mention in a couple of slides. So here's actually a little bit more detail on this NYU partnership that MindMed is really looking to foster. So they've actually made a long-term commitment to solving mental health issues through some of these experiential or experimental treatments. MindMed has committed $5 million over a 5-year period. They're initially going to be focused on substance abuse or disorders, including opioid addiction and alcoholism, which obviously we've seen spike across the United States and worldwide in the midst of this pandemic. And they're actually going to use this partnership to recruit and train more psychiatrists and clinical investigators to eventually scale this out nationwide. Now, in terms of the digital medicine division, they've actually coined this one Albert, and this is really focused on telemedicine and serving people that don't have regular access to a psychiatrist. So this is going to be a data-driven platform. It's going to be fully integrated technology that harnesses AI, and it's going to focus on patient-centered learning to really discover, develop, deploy, once again, the 3Ds of psychedelic-inspired medicines and digital companion treatments. And this platform is actually going to allow people to access remote medicine, personalized patient care, and clinical care remotely. So this one's really exciting, and again, very similar to what we saw from Field Trip Health as well as CloudMD. So there's really been a push to this telemedicine or remote medicine over the last 12 to 18 months. Obviously, the pandemic has really sped that process up. So this is exciting to see as well from MindMed. And you can see that in this slide here. So telehealth or telemedicine visits are up 1,000% during the pandemic period. And some of the use cases for this Albert platform are going to be collecting clinical trial data, diagnosing different diseases, remote patient monitoring, relapse prevention, adherence monitoring, and actually treatment matching or selection. So there's a number of different use cases that they've already come up with. And this platform will continue to grow and evolve as more and more people are onboarded. So we're going to shift gears here a little bit and start to wrap this presentation up. We're going to get into the numbers, which is obviously very important as a prospective investor. So this slide really lays out something I thought was important here. It talks about overall market cap, shares outstanding, but the number I wanted to draw your attention to is actually this one here. So there's over 17% of the company, just about 75 million shares of MindMed that are actually owned by insiders, including the executive team and directors. And as you guys know, I really like companies where there's big inside ownership, because that tells me that these leaders of the company really have a lot of invested interest and skin in the game in terms of seeing this company succeed and become profitable for their shareholders. So this article actually came out on March 30th. This talks about MindMed's year-end financial position. They actually have about $86 million of total assets, of which $80 million US is actually sitting in cash. So the company does have a very large cash position. Now that being said, they saw about 24.2 million of cash burn throughout the last fiscal year, and they're not generating any revenue. So for companies like this that are involved in drug development and creation, it can really be a balancing act of bringing these products to market, staying liquid enough, and ensuring that they're not burning cash at a rate that's going to leave them broke before these products come to market. Now, subsequent to the year ending, and as of March 30th, so a little bit more recent, the company now has a cash balance of about $161 million US, or 203 million Canadian. So this further strengthens that balance sheet and really gives them a little bit longer runway in order to operate and bring these treatments online or to market. So this is actually their most recent filing. Here's where you can see the net cash, or the cash burn, of $24 million. And if we scroll up here a little bit, you can actually see a breakdown of their comprehensive loss for the year. So overall, they had a net loss of about $35 million, or 10 cents per share. 15 million of that was attributed to research and development. Obviously, that's the bread and butter of this company. That's where most of their money is going to be spent. G&A, or general and administrative expenses, made up just about $8 million. Share-based payments were just about $9 million. And then they had some small amortization and interest expenses as well. So again, not the end of the world, but it is something to keep in mind and keep an eye on if you're invested in this company. Now, to sum things up, you guys, I think MindMed is in a really cool position. Obviously, there's a huge opportunity to treat some of these disorders in new and innovative ways. I personally believe psychedelic therapies and treatments are a viable solution, and I'm very bullish on this sector moving forward. Now, specifically in MindMed's case, I think they have a great first mover advantage. They're obviously getting a lot of attention with this NASDAQ uplist and all the Reddit forum discussions that they've been at the center of over the last couple of weeks. I think a lot of institutional investors are going to want a piece of this industry and this action, and I can definitely see this share price appreciating and going up dramatically as this company continues to evolve these treatments and bring these clinical trials to market. Now, that being said, I currently do not have a position in MindMed. I will keep this one on my watch list. I am invested in Red Light Holland, so I do have some exposure to this space, and I'm also keeping a close eye on Field Trip Health. I'll keep you guys updated if and when I do take a position in MindMed, but hopefully this opens your eyes to how this company operates, some of the opportunities they have before them, and a potential investment opportunity in the psychedelic space. As always, you guys, please take a second to like this video. It really does help the channel out and get this content to other people who might find interest like yourself. If you're not subscribed, take a second to do that as well. McNallie Money is nearly at 1,000 subscribers, which is a huge accomplishment for me, and I really want to thank each and every one of you for watching and supporting the channel. Leave a comment in the section below on what you think of this review, if you're currently holding MindMed, or if you have any other alternative companies in this space that you want me to take a look at. And as always, you guys, make sure you have a great rest of your day.